The title for this project is Comic Strip Makeover. Stereotyped images create false ideas that real people can't help to live up to, foster low self-esteem for those who don't fit in, and restrict people's ideas of what they're capable of. In this lesson, students will explore representations of race, class, ethnicity, and gender by analyzing comics over a 2-week period and then re-envisioning them with the comic character makeover. This activity leads to greater awareness of stereotypes in the media and urges students to form more realistic visions of these images as they perform their makeovers. To get started, distribute a copy of the cartoon still stereotype gender roles press release to each student in the class and read together. Once you've read the press release completely, ask students to point out details from the piece that help prove the researcher's point that cartoons stereotype gender roles. For example, that male characters outnumber female characters. Make a list of these characteristics on the board or on chart paper. Turn students' attention to other kinds of stereotyping, such as unfair or unrealistic representations of race, ethnicity, religion, and class. Ensure that students understand each of those terms. You can customize the list to fit each of your classes. Divide students into small groups and have each group choose a television cartoon to explore in class. Students will need to be familiar enough with the cartoon to discuss its representation of characters. Thus, it's probably best to let students select the cartoons themselves. Have students explore the cartoon that they've chosen for the stereotypes that have been identified in the discussion. Ask them to work with 2 large goals in mind. First, look at the portrayal of gender in the cartoons. Considering the list of characteristics gathered from the press release, has the portrayal of gender changed since 1997, and if so, how? Look at other features of the characteristics in the cartoon, such as race, ethnicity, religion, class, and so forth. Create a list of characteristics that demonstrate that the cartoon your group is examining is or is not being stereotyped. Allow students the rest of the session to work on their analysis. Explain that they will present and discuss their findings with the rest of the class during the next class period. Each group will have 5 minutes to share their findings. Ask students to listen for details from the presentations that help prove whether the cartoon stereotype gender roles, race, ethnicity, religion, class, and so on. Share the Comic Makeover project assignment with students. As you discuss the assignment, explain how the checklist that you've compiled can be used to analyze the comic strips for the project. Tell students they will access the comics either online or from printed handouts you have previously selected. Explain the timeline you've chosen for the analysis. Students can gather and analyze the comics over the next 2 weeks, or students can gather the comics for 2 weeks from online comic archives or printouts that you provide so that they can begin the analysis immediately. Demonstrate the process of summarizing and evaluating with a sample comic strip. Then divide students into small groups and allow them to begin their work on the project in class. The groups should support each other and share ideas and feedback. Distribute the comic strip planning sheet and demonstrate the basic steps for rewriting the comic strips using the comic creator. Allow students the remainder of the class period to plan their makeovers using the comic strip planning sheet. Students will use the comic creator during the next class period to create their revised and rewritten comic strip. Keep the focus of this session on revising the character's behavior and language as well as the plot, rather than worrying about the visual representation of the comic strip character. Let this part of the project focus on the way that words and situations can create biased or unrealistic representations. Also, you can print blank comic strip panes and have students draw the revised comics. While students work, again encourage them to interact with one another and to share and receive feedback on their plans for comic strips. After the comic strips are printed out, students can decorate them with markers or other classroom supplies. For the formal assessment, the teacher will use the Comic Character Makeover rubric, which is tied to both the analysis of the existing comics and the revision of that comic strip. Additionally, students will be asked to free write on the following reflective question. As you examined and revised your comic strip, what did you realize that you didn't notice before about your particular comic strips or comics and cartoons in general? Informal feedback from students who read the revised comics and discussed the various stereotypes is also a valid outcome.